There are 4,218 PS2 games, and I've got to beat every one of them. I've got to own the game because I'm playing on the original hardware, but I've beefed it up using a RetroTink 5X, some component cables, and more to come soon. Can I do this before I die of old age? I hope so. Shin Megami Tensei 3 Nocturne was published by Atlus and released at various points in 2003, 2004, 2005, 2008, and even more recently in 2020 as well as 2021 as an HD remaster. Notorious for its difficulty and epic story, the game was a commercial success, more so in Japan, but also in the West. Is this game really as hard as it's made out to be? Yes, that's right. I really don't think this game is as difficult as everyone makes it out to be. So that thumbnail really does mean I have something to say at the end of the video about how difficult I think it is. Although first I'll go over the journey, because I think it's helpful to see where I'm coming from. And don't forget, I don't play all of the game. I go through a lot less than someone who wants to try and get everything, or at least experience as much as they can. So you will be seeing some things I don't, and maybe there are a few more difficult bosses. But those difficult bosses will be completely endgame type stuff and make sense to be as difficult as they are. As for the rest of the game, I just didn't find it as difficult. So I guess let's get on with the journey. Nocturne opens with us having a dream about our teacher. A wet dream? She tells us that she wants us to continue living and all this other kind of cryptic bullshit until we name our character. And of course, I have to name him something silly. I am so sorry, everyone. She then tells us to wake up, and we do. And we are a high school student going to visit our teacher, her, in the hospital with our friends. So we walk about the city on this weird overhead map with this tiny little cursor that moves around the city. We talk to our two other classmates who are also going to visit her until we figure out where we need to go, this very special hospital. Once we are headed towards that direction, we meet a man named Hijiri, who speaks to us of the occult, gives us a magazine he's written an article in about the occult, and tells us he is also headed to this special hospital, and mentions that it's also a part of the occult, and this is all getting very strange. We get to the hospital and we see our first friend, Chiaki, and she tells us to give her the magazine. While she reads it, we have to go find her other friend, Isamu. Now, this is weird because the hospital is practically empty except for the three of us, and also supposedly Hijiri, who's supposed to be in the hospital too. I don't know why he's supposed to be there, but there ain't no one here. Chiaki convinces us we've got to find our teacher, Miss Takeo, because she might need help. So we go down to the basement where we find a man named Hikawa, who begins speaking about more cryptic bullshit. Although this one sounds a little bit like he's trying to end the world for some reason. Although, how is he gonna end the world? We don't know, but he's gonna kill us before he does it. However, our teacher shows up and somehow convinces him just to let us live, just by saying, can't you just let one live? Thank you so much for the great argument. He does let us live, however, and as we exit the room confused, an old woman and a small child show up. They begin talking about more cryptic shit to us and then leave. That's it. They just leave. So we get in the elevator and we go up to the roof where we're supposed to meet our teacher, Miss Takeo, because that's where she wanted to meet us. She says she is going to be the maiden that will bring about the end of the world and the new world, where the new world will be shaped by different kinds of reasons and we'll be able to help. And none of this makes any sense. But then the world fucking ends. The end? Actually, no. The end of the world doesn't technically come about for us. We survive, and we are spoken to by a mysterious voice who looks into our heart and says, there is no reason in your heart. We are practically a blank slate. We are actually the character, as our character has no voice. We are also our character in making the choices that this whole game is setting up for us. And that setup is, of course, us traveling the world, finding a reason for the new world to be created, and then creating it in that image. Say you want the strong to survive and the weak to perish, that kind of world. You would choose that reason, and then the game would end with those things intact. And the new world would be born of the strong, you know? So any kind of reason you can find in different characters, that can be the reason the game ends. There are multiple endings, and I chose one of them. After this mysterious voice talks to us, we are then again confronted by the old woman and the young child, who then hold us down and force us to ingest something called a magatama, which in game terms means how your character is built. When you ingest any certain type of magatama, it changes your resistances and your weaknesses. It will also determine what skills you will be unlocking as you level up. It will also give you a bonus to the 5 different stats that your character has: strength, magic, vigor, agility, and luck. There are a total of 24 different magatama all over the game for either purchase or for finding, for doing special things, and eventually you'll get enough of them where you can use them to your advantage, say in boss fights, to protect yourself from a certain attack. So all of these are very important. After I finally regain consciousness, I'm still in the hospital, and I walk back to a save room, the first save room of the game, and I find Hijiri just standing standing there next to the save crystal. Well, how the hell is he alive? Didn't the world end? Well, he was also in the hospital like he said he was going to be. Apparently the hospital was completely safe from the end of the world, which means Chiaki and Isamu might be out there somewhere, along with our teacher. He says he is just as confused about what's going on as you, although I think he knows more than he leads us on to believe. Well, he asks us to gather some information from him. What kind of information? I have no clue, because then we walk out of the room. We go to the elevator, and we take the elevator down to a very weird place. We are transported to this bizarre realm with red flowing lights all over and water on the ground, and suddenly we begin to see demons. And these demons, whenever we fight them, ask for Magotsui. Something about Magotsui is important to them, and they want it from us. So we have to fight them to survive. Now, here's how combat works. Just like any traditional RPG, you have every one of your allies taking a turn as well as the demons. All of this is determined by your agility, and once it's your turn, it's always your turn. All of your characters go, and agility only determines the order in which your allies take their turns. You have your normal attacks, you have your buffs and debuffs, and you have your magical attacks. Everyone has the standard 2 HP and MP bars that will show you how much health and how much mana you have to spend on abilities. Your party consists of you, always, and 3 other demons. During battle, you can switch demons out at will, but only when it's your main character's turn, or a demon that has a very special ability that allows you to do that. As your turn continues, it goes on quite like a regular RPG would. Everyone attacks or uses magic, uses items, or tries to retreat, and then that's it, right? This game has a little bit more to it. At the top right of the screen, you see a certain number of symbols. Those symbols determine the amount of turns. Each turn that is yours, you start with as many turns as you do have party members. So if you have 4 party members, you have 4 turns. However, that is not the only thing you can do. Let's take, for example, at the bottom of the screen, pass. If you hit pass, it will use up half of a turn. That means each turn is made up of 2 halves. When you pass, that turn at the top right will flash to let you know that it is only half of a turn. Half turns function exactly like a normal turn. The only difference is that if you pass that turn now that it's flashing, it is gone entirely. This system is to help make it so you have some choices in battle. For instance, if you have a character with a full turn and they don't have any moves or abilities you want to use, if you press pass, the next character will get that turn and you wouldn't have lost one, which helps in a battle when you don't necessarily need that character right then. But passing is not the only thing that gets you half turns, and this is where it makes things interesting. If you either critically strike an opponent or hit them with their weakness, you will get an extra half turn, which, as I said before, functions the same as a full turn, which means that if you have 4 turns and you hit someone with their weakness, you will still have 4 turns. One of them will just be a half turn, gaining you essentially 1 extra turn. Now, this only goes so far. You can only gain extra half turns as long as you have a full non-blinking turn at the top right. The second you are out of the non-blinking ones, you cannot gain any extra turns. You must just use them up until they are all gone. It is a bit difficult to explain those turns because it took me a while to understand exactly what each of those things means. I'm trying to show here on the screen exactly how some of my later game fights go so you can see how I exploit the turn system to get full 2 turns for everyone in my party, which is pretty much required for how I'm playing the game. On the flip side, if you miss your attack or you hit a resistance with a magical spell or ability, it will lose you a turn. And no, I don't just mean the turn you just took with that character. I mean the next turn as well. At the top of the screen, one of those turns vanishes without being used, which means it can completely screw you over if you miss or hit a resistance. You never want to do that. These extra turns and missable turns are also for the enemy as well. They have this turn system where if they hit you with a weakness or a critical strike, they will get extra turns. If they hit your resistances, they will miss turns, which is perfect. The idea then is to exploit this system by giving yourself extra turns and taking their turns away, which is admittedly a really cool battle system. Now, fighting is not the only thing you can do in battle though. You can talk to other demons, and this is how you recruit demons for your party. You'll hit the talk option, or another one of your demons who has a special ability to talk with them will also talk with them. 2 things will happen. 1, you will try to recruit them to your party, or 2, you will try and take items or money from them. Items and money are great and can be helpful. However, I didn't find it as useful in my playthrough, but recruiting them to your team really is. You have to be a high enough level for you to use that demon in the first place. Each demon has kind of a base level that if you have not reached, you cannot use them. Once you do, you talk to them and they will ask you questions or ask you for items or things, and if you give them the right answers and the right items, then you will get them on your team. Sometimes they just fuck right off. Sometimes they just give you an item or heal you and leave. It doesn't work all the time. So you must continuously try to get demons on your team, otherwise you won't have enough party members. While we're here, I might as well say something quickly about the leveling system. You level up by getting experience from fights. Anyone who did an action in combat will get experience, and once you level up, you'll get 1 or 2 stat boosts and possibly even get an ability. When your main character levels up, the Magatama you have equipped usually acts violently and lets you either continue letting it act violently or say no. If you say no, pretty much nothing happens. I don't know if there's anything that happens because you say no, but I said yes every time. Most often, doing that would let it heal me. Sometimes it would give me something, but most of the time it would just heal me or heal my entire team. Sometimes though, it would poison me and do bad things. It's possible, but it's not really that big of a deal, so I always said yes. Your demons, when they level up, have the same things except for the Magatama part. Instead, they have a chance to either give you an item or, if their character allows it, to transform. They won't transform right away. It will say that changes are being seen in their body, which means eventually they're going to transform into a stronger monster or demon. Okay, moving on, we meet our first demon who is just outside of battle. Her name is Pixie. She has some healing and some thunder called Zio, and she just joins us because that's cool. So it's our first demon party member. Now, the next several hours I spend in the hospital just kind of leveling up, gathering more demon party members so that I actually have a party, and waiting until I'm ready to fight the first boss, which is right outside of the room to lead out of the hospital. His name is Fornius, and he isn't terribly difficult. It gives you an option to have Zio, which is his weakness, and that's great because Pixie has that, which means that you can zap him and get some extra turns. And when you use a magic ability, sometimes you can get a status ailment. With Zio or Thunder, it will shock them. That shock means they cannot dodge, and any normal physical attack you hit them with will crit. So you want to use that until that happens, and then use a bunch of normal attacks to crit. Once I beat him, I step outside, and I'm again accosted by the old woman and the small child who's in a suit. They talk to me a minute about the thing in the sky, the Kagetsuchi. This acts as a power source for the denizens of this whole world, which is just a circular Tokyo. That's right, you've been cut off from everywhere except for this small area in Tokyo that is enveloped in this shroud of sphere above you, and you're all powered by this Kagetsuchi. But in game terms, this is technically the moon, and you'll have these Kagetsuchi phases, like moon phases on the top left. You'll see from new to full and everywhere in between. So it'll say new, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, full, and then it will go back down. It'll go back and forth, and each of those things can kind of mean something different. I never learned exactly what they were. They affect things that I do in the future. Then the two leave, and I walk away as well. However, we get to see one more little cutscene with a familiar character, Dante from Devil May Cry 2. For some reason, they decided to use Devil May Cry 2 as where he's from instead of the first one, the superior one, but whatever. He talks about having a contract with someone and doing a job here, and it's going to be difficult, which for Dante it shouldn't be. We leave the hospital to the open world map, which is pretty much just desert with small cityscapes scattered around. We are going to travel the map until we find areas to go, and the first thing we're looking for is our classmates, because that's pretty much the last thing we remember, Chiaki and Isamu. We first head to the small area of Shibuya, which contains what you would consider a small town in an RPG. It contains 4 doors that you'll see very often in different town areas, although it's still not safe. Something that's kind of interesting in this game. Almost no areas in the game are safe. There are a few, but if you look at the bottom right hand corner of the screen at your little compass, you can see it flash yellow, orange, and then red when you're going to fight. If you see it flashing, you can have battles there. And you can have battles all the way up to the doors for the save point, for the healing, for the Cathedral of Shadows, and for the shop. As I said, these 4 doors are very common. The save points come in 2 different varieties, a big one and a small one. The big ones are ones that connect to each other and you can teleport to. The small ones are only in that area. You cannot teleport to them, but you can teleport from them. The shop is very simple. You walk in, you can buy things and sell things. That's it. The door with the big green plus sign is the healing area. You actually talk to a demon who will heal your party for money. The last door leads to the Cathedral of Shadows, which is a much more complex door than any of the others. This is where you will register your demons that you have to view later and also resummon them if you need that demon back. Registering a demon keeps all of the skills they have learned in the order they learn them and keeps them at the level you last registered them at, which is very helpful. But they can also help you fuse your demons together. You can put your demons together to make a new one, and they will be a higher level, they will be different, and they will carry across skills. The hardest part of this game, however, is having your demons fuse together with the skills that you want them to have, because when you are doing this, it will randomly pick the skills from one demon to the other demon and put it on the third one. Every time you select them and hit fuse, you'll get to see a stat screen with what they will have. If they don't have the skills you want, the only thing you can do is to back out and do it again, and do it again, and do it again, until you get the right skills. Like I said, it will be randomly chosen. Apparently, there are weights associated with each kind of skill, so it will be harder to get those two skills, and you cannot get all the skills from one monster or demon onto that one. You'll have to get some from each. I don't know the exact ratio. If you want to look it up, you can, but it is difficult. I spent upwards from 20 minutes to an hour doing nothing but switching back and forth, trying to see if I can get the correct skills. And you can see on the screen up here, very quick jumps back and forth as I'm doing this. So this is where a big part of the game comes in at, fusing your demons. Okay, back to our quest. As we move a little deeper into Shibuya, we find Chiaki in a small bar, and we talk to her a little bit, and obviously she is pretty distraught because no one told her what was happening other than that magazine article she was reading, but no one helped her like they helped me. Although not, everyone told me a bunch of cryptic stuff, so it doesn't matter, but she's pretty upset, and she feels like it's a nightmare, which, yeah, sure, the world ending sounds like a nightmare. At the end of her conversation, she just disappears without us in this scary world by herself. Okay, Chiaki. Next, I go to the save point to make a save. Hijiri is again waiting for us, and he talks to us again about the save points, which we already know teleport us places, but he says that they're connected by the thing called the Amala network, and that he can use it to take us to a place called Ginza. While we were walking around, some demons can be spoken to. Many of them spoke about an organization run by a human who is probably Hikawa, the guy who's going to kill us at the beginning of the game, and they are going to shape the new world. They're called Nihilo, which is pretty much just short for nihilism. Hijiri wants us to stop Hikawa because he thinks he's evil, so we must use the Amala network to get me to Ginza, this other area in Tokyo where that organization Nihilo is located. He does, however, say that he's not sure how this will work and will teleport us when we're ready. We take the chance and we go into the Amala network, which is probably my most disliked areas in the game. When you are in the Amala network, there is a lot of teleporting. As you walk down corridors through this little dungeon, if you go the wrong direction, you will be teleported back to a starting area where you must then find your way through by making your own map. You press triangle to open the map and you can see exactly where you are, but you also have to just watch for these places that will teleport you back 3 or 4 screens. So it's just a guessing game. Guess which way to go, and if you get it right, great. If you don't, you have to do it again and go the other way. This goes on for a long time. The whole time we're fighting different kinds of demons, trying to recruit them to our party, leveling up, and learning a little bit more about the Amala network. Not that there's a lot to learn right this second, but we do learn a little bit. During these sections, Hijiri can't talk to us very well because his communication is dropping, so the only places to talk to him are these very specific spots in the dungeon, obviously just for game pacing purposes. Once we get there, he says this is the only place we can talk, but keep going and we'll find each other again. As we continue on, we eventually find our very first real boss that has some kind of mechanics to him. He is a phantom demon that gathers about 6 other phantoms around him. As the battle goes on, they will all do damage until eventually they form up into one big phantom. The more phantoms alive when he gathers everyone up, the stronger he will be. If you kill any of them, you will make him weaker. In fact, my second fight with him, he says, "I'm weak, that's your fault," because I killed some of them before he was able to pull them in. Now, the first battle I did die, and I spent about an hour leveling up and grinding. Alright, after the fight's over, we move on to see some new characters. Now, they aren't completely new. We've seen them once or twice before, but they haven't really spoken to us. Now they take the time to speak to us. It's a lady in black, but a guy in a wheelchair, and he's got this long flowing blonde hair, and they talk to us about the Amala network and the candelabrums. The candelabrums are something we will collect to use in the Amala network, but we don't know much about them yet. We just get one, and we're told that they're hoping that we do what they kind of want us to do. Everyone here wants us to listen to their reasons why the world should be created, so they kind of want us to listen. Directly after this, they send us to Ginza, where we wanted to go in the first place, where we start to learn a little bit more about the Assembly of Nilo. We learn that they are stockpiling Magatsuei, which is some kind of power, and we don't know why yet. In Ginza, a place that I use quite often to help me fuse demons and to heal and to save, also has a gem shop. In the game, you will find gems every so often. This shop will allow you to trade items for gems. You can also trade demons and elementals. These elementals are called Mitama, and they do not fuse with your demons and make a new demon. Instead, they upgrade that demon and give them some of their abilities if they have space. This is helpful for if you want to keep a certain demon in your party, but you want them to be a little stronger. Just get a Mitama that will upgrade their attack or their health or their magic, their luck, their agility, and give it to them a few times. That'll upgrade their stats and they'll make them more useful. Plus, if they have empty space, maybe an ability or two. While in Ginza, I learned that there is another place called Ikebukuro that I can get to by going to a warehouse out on the world map. This leads to the next place we need to go. This warehouse far away from Ginza leads us to the Ginza Underpass, where we meet a whole new race called mannequins. They are like mud people built from mud to look like humans, but they aren't actually humans. They're treated terribly, and it's kind of terrible, and they are all hiding under here in hopes that they don't get seen, captured, and enslaved. The underpass is quite a large area with different waterways you walk through. In the water is where you fight, and outside of the water you don't fight, although sometimes you do. So whatever, you fight a lot of enemies, and you finally get to a gate that is being blocked by a gatekeeper. He's not allowed to let you leave though, because they're worried about the mantra. The mantra are another set of demons that are rallying to make a reason for the world to be created. Just like the Assembly of Nilo, who's being run by Hikawa, that human who's going to kill us at the beginning of the game. This is run by a demon, and it's a completely different reason. So they have different ideals behind what they're doing, and they're scared of the mantra. However, we find a mannequin who is a collector, and he says that he will convince the guard to let you through if you find him money. That's right, old world money, because in this game, money is different than the real old world paper money that we used to have. So now we have to go find some money. I head back to Ginza and find out that this one guy in the bar has the money in a chest in his room, but he won't let you in his room. So you gotta leave Ginza, walk around until you find a back alley, walk into the back alley, and then go to his room. On his way to his room though, he has a guard, a big troll who fights us. He's not really that hard. I beat him in the first go. There's really nothing memorable. But once I do, I go in his room and I find the $1,000 yen note that I can give to the collector, along with some other cool things. I return with the note, give it to the collector, he opens the gate for me, and I go through. But not too far on the other side of this gate, we meet the first fiend. He holds the very first candelabrum that we're gonna take. That old woman and the man in the wheelchair both told me about the candelabrums just earlier in the Amala network. This is one thing we're supposed to find. These are very special fights that you'll find throughout the game that, by the way, are not necessary. This is the only one I do. If you're wondering whether or not you can beat the game without them, you absolutely can. But a lot of people like getting the candelabrums because it opens up tons of new possibilities in the Amala network, which I don't do, and items, money, skills, abilities, everything. So, I missed out on a lot. This fiend is very tough. In fact, a lot of people say he is the first wall in the game. Now, his name is Matador, and he is very speedy. He makes his agility go up very high so he can dodge attacks and always land his attacks. You must use debuffs that lower his chance to dodge, otherwise you are going to miss constantly. He also has a decent attack stat that lets him do a lot of damage per attack, as well as several party-wide attacks, like a wind spell and a cool physical spell that takes HP instead of MP. At this point, I have a party-wide heal, as well as many different buffs and debuffs. Now, the thing is that bosses will come with a way to remove your debuffs on them. It's called Dakunda, and it will remove anything that ends in an NDA, which I have, called Tarunda. This lowers all of his damage, and while that's helpful, he can just outright remove it. So that sucks a little bit. You have to work around that. I get lucky and I'm able to deal enough damage to kill him. However, this is the first time we start to learn about how this game can easily screw you over. After the fight, I walk forward a little bit in hopes to find a save point. Well, a couple minutes into walking around, just a few minutes, I haven't even reached a save point. I join a random battle and die immediately, and I have to fight him again, which really sucks. I am able to beat him the second time, and the second time I come out of the fight, I immediately heal everyone to full with items in my inventory, and that's what I do for the rest of the game. If you beat a boss, you need to have some items to heal yourself because you won't be able to just get to a save point right away. So keep this in mind. As I said before, defeating him gets me a candelabrum, which I take with me to the Amala network to see what I can do with it. Well, as I go down, there are many different doors hours, I open a door, I go down and I put the candelabrum in a spot. Then I walk through and I'm able to access the Amala Network dungeon. This very first floor is very difficult. I mean, starting off, it feels like I'm fighting much higher level monsters, which I am. If I go back out and do other things, I probably would have been better off. I start here and I die several times walking through, looking at things. I lose a lot of progress. I do level up a bit and learn some about the game, but it is not something that I was ready for right away. Although it is the place that I level up for a little while. In fact, 2 or 3 hours spent here just figuring things out and leveling up. This is the last time I visit the Amala Network for anything big. I do visit it once to grab a demon from someone here, and I'll explain that later, but I leave and I go back to the Ginza Underpass, where I continue on my way through to get to Ikebukuro. I spend more time grinding there, going back to the Amala Network and finishing up the first candelabrum, just so I can see what happens. What happens after that is that the lady in black, as well as the guy in the wheelchair, talk to me about how Kagetsuchi, that thing hanging up in the sky giving us all power, rises and falls between billions of other different worlds. It's like this huge network. The Amala Network is not just this small world that we're in right now. It is billions of different worlds, and this happens all over. Worlds are destroyed and created constantly, and they don't know why, and the reason they want to find out is because that it might help them figure out how to stop it or whatever they want to do. Because this is the last time I come here, I don't really know all of what they want, but getting the candelabrums will help them figure it out. So if you want to do it, that's what you do. Directly after this, we leave and we're contacted by a noble voice who tries to talk us out of actually helping those two people. And I'm like, okay, I don't know who you are. I don't know who they are. I don't know who anyone is except my 2 classmates, and they're just fucking about in this broken world. So I don't know what I should say. So I say, yeah, sure. At this point, that section has ended no matter what I want to do. So I go back to Ikebukuro and actually explore it instead of just grinding. After exploring for a while, I find a huge tower which houses the other organization, Mantra, and all the demons that are rallying behind this specific reason for world creation. Upon entering, I see my classmate Isamu. He's actually alive. And then he gets his ass hammered by this big creature called Thor. He gets taken to one prison down below where there's nothing happening to him. I'm not sure why. And we get taken to a prison on the 3rd floor, and there's fights. If you win your fights, apparently you get to leave. So I guess we're gonna have to win our fights. After a short prison scene, I have to fight 3 fights, and the last one ends in fighting Thor. Now these are all a little bit difficult, but Thor's fight is the hardest. Thor unsurprisingly uses a bunch of lightning attacks. He uses targeted ones on one character and group-wide attacks, and then also some very strong physical ones. Now, unlucky for me, I had a weakness on my team to lightning, so that made it a little bit harder. But through a lot of buffs and debuffs and just straight up attacking, I'm able to win. Also, I do use another mechanic, an ability that your demons can learn called Bright Might. Now, there are 2 of these skills, Bright Might and Dark Might. What these do is, depending on whether or not the Kagetsuchi is full or new, these abilities activate passively and will give you always critical strikes for your normal attacks. Bright Might is when it's full, Dark Might is when it's new. So I have Bright Might on one of my characters, and they always strike critically when I attack, which gives you an extra turn. What's interesting is that this ability depends upon what cycle the moon is, so it needs to be full for Bright Might to be active. The only way to make that happen is to run around in a circle until it hits full and then enter the boss fight, which is absolutely possible pretty much the rest of the game. Had I known about this a little earlier or understood how useful this was, it would have been more helpful, because by the end of the game, I lean on it so heavily, and it's super, super helpful for under-leveled teams and just in general, because I mean, getting critical hits gives you extra turns, it does extra damage, it's like super helpful, and all you have to do is run around in a circle as long as you know where the boss is, wait till it hits full moon, and then walk over and initiate the boss fight. After I defeat Thor, she's like, alright, yeah, you're cool enough, and then kicks us out, which, great, wonderful. They kick us all the way back out to where the save and the healing is. So when I go back in to go find Isamu, who is in jail, we're gonna try and save him, we get accosted by Dante from Devil May Cry 2, apparently. He fights us, and he is actually holding on to one of the candelabrums. Although I don't get it here, he actually leaves the fight before I kill him. We do fight for a minute, and he's not terribly hard in this fight. You do fight him later, I think. I didn't actually do it myself, but he is difficult in those later fights. This one's not too bad, and I beat him the first time. He uses a couple familiar moves you might see from Devil May Cry, but they're in RPG battle form. I kick his ass, and I go inside the headquarters to find Isamu, who says, hey, I can't get out of here yet, and I know you won your trial, so that's great, but go save our teacher, who is a maiden. I'm like, well, how do you know that, and what the
fuck? So I'm just gonna leave you here? All right. Well, I decide to go all the way up to the top of the tower where we meet Gozu Tenno, the actual leader of the Mantra Demons, and his own reason. He hates the Assembly of Nihilo and asks if you will join him. If you do, he will give you some power, which he gives me the power to have 2 extra demons in my party, which is great. Not in battle, just in my party. I do tell him yes, I want to be part of the Mantra Demons, although really I don't need to because I'm going for the quickest ending in the game. So I say yes anyway, and then he asks us to go attack the Assembly of Nihilo with them so that we can defeat them. They're bad. Just outside of Ginza is the Assembly of Nihilo, which we go to and find that the Mantra Demons are already there and have already cleared the entire thing out. They found where they were stockpiling the Magotsui, and they've won. So we go through like these empty rooms, these treasure chests that have already been opened, all these demons of the mantra telling us like, oh, we won, until we actually find that this is not the case, that the Assembly of Nihilo is much further down, hiding, still gaining Magotsui. Now I need 3 different keys to get through this area, but first I spend some time grinding to hit level 30 because then I can actually summon as a demon Matador, the boss I fought earlier, and he's very helpful for quite some time. And that actually takes several hours to do because I just need a lot of experience, and then I spend some time re-rolling his fusion to make sure I get the abilities and skills on him that I'd like. Back to the Assembly of Nihilo, it's kind of a weird area. It's not very memorable. It's this top-down view of cubes where you go around and hit switches to connect the cubes in different ways. As you go down each floor, you must find the boss with the key, and these bosses aren't really hard at all. They're like mini bosses. This whole area isn't necessarily that hard. I think I died once, and it was kind of from an ambush where they all attacked my main character and he just up and died. But that was just unlucky. Otherwise, these things aren't too hard to fight. You just go through tons and tons of random battles, flipping switches, and walking in certain places so you don't get sent back somewhere else. It is not a memorable area. Once I do complete it and get all the keys though, I finally make it to Hikawa. He tells us that he's gathered all the Magotsui he needs, and he really did. He has all of it. And he activates something called the Nightmare System, which apparently gives him complete control of all the Magotsui everywhere, and he's able to just bloop, suck it right up out of existence from wherever he wants. And he says, I'm gonna do it to Ikebukuro first, which means the Mantra headquarters. Uh-oh, I don't really care about them though, so who gives a shit? But he does send this Action 52 Cheetah Man to fight me as a boss battle. Definitely an easier fight than many of the last boss battles. This guy just hits a lot with physical attacks, and he uses focus, which makes the next physical attack deal a lot of damage. And a couple of them he has hit party-wide. Now I have 2 things against this. One, my main character has counter, which means anytime he's hit by a physical attack, he will counter back. There are a couple of these that get stronger as you get them, like Avenge after this. And it's a great move to have, but it's not always helpful, especially if a boss is physical resistant, which means that they will not be hurt by physical attacks. It literally just makes it useless. And the second thing I have is one of my characters is actually physical resistant, to the point where it voids the damage. Now don't forget, whenever an enemy or I miss or hit a resistance, we lose turns. So anytime he physically attacks that character and they void his damage, he loses all of his turns immediately, which is great. It's great to have a physical resistant person so early on because you can make the bosses lose turns all over the place. Well, Hikawa escapes and we decide to go back to the Mantra headquarters to see if he really did destroy it. And while the headquarters itself isn't destroyed, we do find Chiaki there, and she is starting to go a little insane. She believes that she was left alive during the end of the world so that she could choose a reason for the new world to be created, which her reason is survival of the fittest, or like some kind of elitism. You know, the weak are always going to serve the strong type thing because she's afraid to ever be kind of lower class. She's a much more higher class person, and she has to watch her back all the time. So she just wants this world to be exactly that. Not really sure how she's going to do it. Yes, she is a human, and apparently humans are the only ones who can actually come up with a legitimate reason for a new world creation. But she has no power. She's just Chiaki. She's been running around not knowing where she's going, being pretty weak, so I guess we'll see where this goes. We rescue Isamu from prison, and he says, oh, I was really hoping you'd be able to get our teacher with your demonic powers. Well, fuck you, dude. She wasn't actually there when I went to go see her. So he says, well, there is a mannequin, one of those like mud people, who can tell the future. His name is Fudomimi, and he's been put in prison, probably because of his prophetic visions. Next, I head all the way back up to the tower where I met Gozu Tenno, and he really is being drained of Kagetsuji. He crumbles into dust, and this is most definitely the last time we'll see him. Our next goal is to head to the prison to find Fudomimi, since he really can see the future apparently, and it would be really helpful if we found out what's going on. But before I do, I spend over over half an hour trying to fuse together some demons to make one that has the exact skills I want. And this is going to happen often. Again, like I said, it's going to happen a lot. But this is how the game works. So I spend a lot of time figuring out what I want, what I need, putting it together, doing a little grinding until I'm finally ready to move on. In the prison, it's a little bit of an interesting puzzle, I suppose. It's better than some of the other ones. This one has these special mirrors that you walk into that will turn the whole area upside down. There are holes in the floor, there are doors and ladders, and you must find your way through the different parts of the floors by flipping it upside down and falling into certain places where you can hit switches that will open gates that will allow you to walk across the ceiling upside down to get to new areas. I spend quite a bit of time in here though, because it is hard to tell where you actually need to go. While you do have a map that will show you exits and entrances, you're never really sure which one you went into. And the whole point of this area is to grab a spoon from the collector mannequin you saw earlier, who you got a $1,000 bill for. He gives you a spoon and you give it to another guy who digs a hole in the side of his room. You then go in the room and that hole will lead further in. It's just kind of hard to tell exactly where things are. In the mirror world, you can see some of the mannequins. Outside of the mirror world, you can't see them. Rooms are empty. So all you can hear sometimes are random bits and pieces of a conversation, and your hope is to find that room again while in the mirror world so you can see who's in there. The boss of this prison is really not that difficult. One of the enemies that's normally seen in the dungeon itself, this like water snake, is just a big version for the boss, and he's got the same weaknesses and the same strengths, so you just kind of fight him like you would the snake. Plus I've got Bright Might, which really gives me the extra turns I need to kick his ass. We do free Furumimi, and he says, hey, your friend is in the other room, come talk to me in a minute. So we go see Isamu, who apparently got there before us and got trapped in the save room. He is upset that we were too late. I don't know how we were too late, we got there at the same time, but he says, hey, are you gonna apologize? Are you gonna talk back to me, whatever? I say, I'm leaving the room. That's it. I don't give a shit about Isamu. I have a very specific ending I'm going for, so I'm like, fuck you, bro. And he's like, fine, I can't rely on anyone. And then he starts to crackle with energy. Apparently he's starting to begin to create his own reason. So he just touches the save point and goes inside the Amala network. For some reason, he's figured out how to do this, and he has no powers that we know of. But I mean, I guess being a human at the end of the world and being one of the only few people or beings in the whole entire world that can actually change it probably means something. Furumimi then tells us that there's someone waiting for us in Ginza and that he is going to go back to his hometown, where all the mannequins are going to head now because, well, they're free. Hijiri is actually the one waiting for us in Ginza, and he says we really need to find a way to stop this nightmare system, but there's no way to do that because these save points, these Amala Network save points, are under Nilo's control, so they'll know what we're doing. We need to find one they aren't actively watching. Hey, I bet I know where one is. In the hometown of the mannequins, where Furumimi just went, Asakusa, can you go there and find it? So on our way there, someone tells me in the stream that there is a demon that can help me, and you purchase them inside of the Amala Network, somewhere I've actually already been, but he wouldn't let me purchase this demon originally because I wasn't high enough level. Well, I forgot about it and he reminded me and said, hey, go there and get this demon. Well, this demon has a lot of quality of life abilities that you don't necessarily need to use in battle. They're all outside of battle. He has 4 abilities. Liftoma is lifting your character up above floor traps. So if there's any red floor traps on the ground, it will instantly save you from it and you can walk around like there's no floor traps. Lightoma will light up dark areas. This will allow us to see in dark areas without ramming ourselves in the walls and missing doors. Riborama makes encounters happen more often. So if you're grinding or fusing and stuff like that and you need items and abilities, then you'll fight monsters more frequently. And S-Toma will stop them. It's like you use a repel in Pokemon. You get less fights, although I don't find it as helpful as I wish it would be because you still get tons of fights. It's just, there's just no way around it. So S-Toma is really helpful, but not as helpful as in other games where you can just stop fights altogether. This game still has tons of fights. I make the long trek all the way to Asakusa, fighting tons of enemies in a big cave that contains some mini bosses I skipped. I did not want to fight them, nor did I need to. I make it to the city, I get to the save point, and mysteriously, Hijiri is already there waiting for me. He is a human, so he's probably going to be wrapped up in this somehow. Anyway, he says he needs time to figure things out and to go explore Asakusa, which I do. And I find out that there's a ruthless maniac mannequin who is tearing off the skin of other mannequins and wearing it. And that's that's it. They just tell me that's happening, and I'm like, okay, that's terrible. So as I move on, I go through a few more little underground sections, fight some fights, find some more mannequins, do a little mini game, until I eventually make it to Mifunashiro, which is the holy ground for the mannequins and where Fudamimi is meditating about the future. I head back to Asakusa to talk to Hijiri, but first I meet the mannequin who's ripping off the other mannequin's skin, and he's just like totally nonchalant and like, maybe we'll meet again in the future, while wearing the skins of his brothers. It's really weird. Back to Hijiri, he tells us he's found an obelisk which contains all of the Magatsuchi that has been gathered by the Nightmare System. It's the actual Nilo headquarters, and we've got to go there by going through a back exit from the Assembly of Nilo building, all the way over on the other side of the world. So we go through there, and on our way, I decide to maybe set up a new party and do a lot of grinding, which I do. There's a decent place inside these tunnels where there are these little Mothmen who give lots of experience and are weak to Zeo, which is great because I have a lot of Zeo on my team, and every time I fight them, I get like 800 or 900 experience points, which at this point, these battles are consistent enough for me to win and get that they help me level up very quickly. It's also a good time for me to gather some gems because I need these Mitama guys who will upgrade my demons by just giving them some extra abilities as well as some extra stats. And I really need a good healing party member. And I make this interesting choice. There's a Phantom that I have who has Mana Drain and also has Meteorama. Meteorama is our party-wide healing spell, and Mana Drain will, of course, drain the enemy's mana. Now, at first, this seems good, but instead, Life Drain is actually the better Mana Drain, which confused me at first. Mana Drain takes just a little bit of mana. Life Drain takes both life and mana and gives it to me from any enemy. So now I have a party member who can infinitely heal and deal damage throughout all of my travels. In fact, I use Phantom until the end of the game. Once I'm done with my setup, I head into the obelisk to find that the three Sisters of Fate, you know, the ones from mythology that like have the thread and the scissors and determine when your life ends and stuff, they're actually protecting the whole tower. So we gotta defeat them. And on the way up, we fight a lot of tough enemies. Lots of dodge and the ability to hit my party for all these different weaknesses, as well as status ailments like panic and poison and shock. All these things really make it difficult to fight just individual random encounters. There is a small puzzle, which in my opinion is much better than the teleporting maze puzzles that you have to do. I hate those ones. This one deals with the moon cycles at the top left of the screen. If you step into this light, it will reset it to new, and every square you step on with these little diamonds on it will advance the cycle ahead that many cycles. So 1 will advance at 1, 2 will advance at 2, 3 will advance at 3, and etc. So what you do is you step on one and advance it, and in the background you see these other blocks blocking your path. You have to have that many on the moon cycle to pass. So if there's 8, you need to have it at a full moon to pass this block. Every time you step on one, you have to step to a adjacent square. You can't just step wherever you want. So you've got to plan your route, which these aren't necessarily super difficult. So planning the route isn't hard. You do need to a few times go back and forth on the same 2 squares a couple times to reach the actual number you need. And that's it. As I said before, the bosses of this area are the 3 Sisters of Fate. And to fight them properly, you must do the puzzle with the moon cycles. And you have to do it in a very specific order. You must fight from right to left, and you go to the right, fight the first sister by herself, go left a little to fight the next sister, then you go left a little bit to fight the next one. And once you fight all 3, you can then fight the 3 of them together in a battle. And you got to do this all at the same time. Now you can heal in between each of the fights, but you have to complete the puzzle properly and the fights, or you'll have to repeat them over and over until you do it correctly. Once you figure out the pattern, it's easy, but fighting all 3 of them together is tough. So the fights individually, the bosses, just like usual, get several turns, and sometimes some of them have ways to heal themselves, some of them have ways to stun your characters, some of them have ways to get more turns, some of them even have ways to put an anti-physical shield on themselves, which I'm kind of relying on physical right now, so it kind of sucks when I can't attack them and do any damage because they put a shield on themselves that will almost certainly remove all of my turns if I attack it because it voids the damage and will hurt myself. So there's no reason to attack them with that. It is a little difficult, but the 3 of them was extra difficult. I had to leave, fight, and get a new demon to do it properly. But here's the trick. All 3 of them get 1 turn, and all 3 of them have different things they do. One of them buffs and debuffs, one of them heals, and one of them deals damage. The one who heals has a decent amount of health, but it's low enough that if you're able to quickly at the beginning of the fight deal it and kill her, then that's it. The fight's easy because she just heals so much throughout the fight. She will heal 400 to 500 each turn, and if she gets an extra turn, turn for some reason, like let's say they hit a weakness of yours, if she gets an extra turn, she will heal a second time, and that really sucks. Then she's healed everyone to full. So I use Bright Might on several of my characters at this point to just deal so much damage she dies in one turn and there's no recourse for her. And that makes the fight much more simple. Once the fight is over, I head to the top of the obelisk to find my teacher, who is the maiden. I said this before, it's not really exactly clear why she's the maiden, to me at least. Of course, you can probably find that online, but she apparently has some kind of power in her that Hikawa used to start the end of the world at the beginning of the game. She is upset that he used her for gaining power and to contact a god to help him craft his reason for a new world, which is what you need to do. You need to find some sort of god or sponsor who will back your reason for the creation of a new world. Then you can gather the power necessary and then do it. But she wants to also do it. The problem is that her reason is not well developed yet. So she still found a god, and the god's a little annoyed, I think, that she did that. She didn't really have a reason, and she summoned this god. So the god gives me some power and explains, like, things are teetering on the edge. This woman's gonna release her power at some point. Although, we'll see what happens to her later. After we talk with this woman, we then talk to the small kid and the old woman again. And this starts to become a little bit more clear what we are now meant to do. They say that we're allowed to do whatever we want, but we need to try and figure out how we want the new world to be created. And we can accept any reason from any human we want. We are half human, half demon, so we can't necessarily come up with our own reason. But we're so powerful that we can influence which reason reaches the god, the Kagetsuchi, the one who will actually shape the world and will change things. So we have complete control over what reason gets chosen, but not why. You know, we just choose what we want. We don't get to choose the reason ourselves, like come up with it and have a god following us. We just kill everyone and tell them this is the reason that you want to choose. So I guess it's just really interesting. It's a very interesting setup story. So now we are choosing what reason we want for the new world to be created. And for me, this may make people upset, but I'm choosing the demon ending. There are about 5 or 6 endings in this game. The fastest way to beat the game is the demon ending. Pretty much forsaking all reasons and just saying, nah, I don't want to do nothing. I just killed everyone for fun. And they did not like that. So that's what I'm going for. So I'm not aligning myself with anyone. After stopping the nightmare system from ravaging Kagetsuchi from everywhere in the planet, we find ourselves back into Asakusa, where we find Hijiri waiting for us at the save point. And he says, hey, this kid Isamu went inside the Amala network. Do you want to follow him? We're like, yeah, of course. So we go into the Amala network and we do another teleport dungeon, which these ones suck. If you go down the wrong path, you get teleported back a bit. Then you got to go back and find the right path. That's it. Over and over and over, a bunch of times. Eventually, we do make it back to the Phantom boss, the boss that we fought very early on in the game. He's back and he's pissed. So he says, I learned some new stuff, and he actually did. So he still splits up into a bunch of small phantoms, but now he has learned how to use a new spell, Megadola, which is a special version of all the spells in the game. It's called Almighty Damage. It is not a weakness or a resistance or a void or a drain, nothing. It will hit you for a certain amount of damage every single time. Nothing you do, aside from just lowering the enemy's damage entirely, will help stop it. You can't just stop it, unless you dodge, of course, but that's not just always going to happen. So this is pretty tough, and all of these little phantom guys can cast it. However, he starts with 0 MP on all his characters, so he actually says, oh, I didn't have enough to cast it. Then he spends a turn draining your mana to be able to cast it, and this spell doesn't take much to cast. The first time I fight him, obviously I didn't know what I was doing, so I die. I come back in after leveling up a few times and have a good strategy. I steal his mana with life drain and mana drain from a couple of my characters every time he tries to take my mana to cast the spell. So I almost completely stop him from casting it at all, and it makes the fight a breeze. After the fight, we see Isamu, who now has mannequin faces on his chest, and they're beating like a heart. Okay, shit, what the fuck happened to him? Well, he explains to us that he is now the new all-powerful Isamu, and he's got a new reason for creating a world. And his is interesting. His is like isolation. He says that you are the center of your own world, so why should everyone not get the chance to have their own created world themselves? They'll be isolated in it, but they can have their own world. They control anything without any outside interference and can live as they want to. Obviously, you can see problems with this, but also good sides. So if it's up to you if you want to choose it, but I say, no. After Isamu escapes because we say no, Hijiri says, too bad you couldn't get him. I'll handle it from here on out. Don't worry. Why don't you go check some shit out? And I do. I go all the way back to Ikebukuro and I head to the Mantra headquarters where I find Hikawa on the steps. And he begins in on his reason for world creation, which, I mean, he was
was the person who brought about the end of the world in the first place, so he should probably tell me why he's doing this shit. Took him a long time. Here's what he wants to do. He wants there to be a world of perfect harmony. He wants it to be like some hive mind where there's no individuality or something, and, so everything is kind of controlled and everyone's equal to each other, and it's almost kind of like equilibrium. I mean, maybe it's a little different than that, but just think of it like that, where no one has like these emotions, there's no war, there's no crazy shit, but that's what he wants. And we say no, because I don't fucking want to do that. Well, there's nothing left for us here, so we head back to talk to Fudamimi, who has finally seen the future and seen that the mannequins are in trouble. A dark power is forming in Yoyogi Park, where we need to go and figure out what is such a threat to the mannequins. Well, this guy obviously knows how to see the future, so we might as well believe him. So let's head there. On our way, we do run into Hijiri, who mentions once more the Mantra headquarters, which we will visit again later. However, for now, we take a long trek back to near the beginning of the game, where a new area is open and we can go inside and make a long trek all the way to Yoyogi Park, which has lots of strong enemies. I make it to Yoyogi Park, where I find my teacher once again in the back part of Yoyogi Park. I can't get in because it's locked, and she's just kind of in this random room. She says, I don't want Hikawa to be the one who creates the new world because his world is stupid. I have all these arguments against it. So please help me instead. She says she doesn't want to use Magetsui to control her god to make the reason come true. Instead, there's a stone that can control gods called the Yahirono Himorogi. And if she gets it, she might be able to have her god finally come up with a reason for her to create the new world. Although she's still kind of not developed her own, which is weird. This next part fucking sucks. You are in a construction yard that's very large. There's only one actual way to get out of each of the different yards. There are many different paths and bridges that you'll walk underneath. And there are ferries that will randomly place themselves around the area. And if you walk under a bridge that one of them occupies, they will randomly send you somewhere else in the construction yard. You can see where they are by climbing up a ladder and looking out over it to see the little shiny spots, but sometimes they change and later on you can't. You just have to guess. It is frustrating and annoying. I do not like these mechanics. It's the same thing as the teleporting dungeons, except slightly different. And it's not fun. I don't like these things. I don't want to retread the same path 50 times in hopes I can finally find the right way out. I would rather do a small puzzle like the Kagetsuchi puzzle where I have the moon phases, or just fighting or something. I don't know. These are so annoying. Once I finally get my way through this fucking stupid dungeon, I find out from some demons that Chiaki was actually here to try and take the stone from someone else themselves. See, someone has the stone that my teacher now wants, and that person is the mannequin who's been stealing mannequin skins. Everyone's coming together. All this stuff's coming together. Chiaki got beat up pretty badly, is what they tell me, and then she fled. I don't know why she fled. That guy was stealing mannequin skins. Why didn't he kill her? I don't know. Anyway, he has this stone that we need for our teacher, so we go after him and we fight him. He summons a very large demon who is void to physical, which I'm fucking relying on physical, like Bright Might, and my main character is all physical based. He is a little tough, but I beat him in the first go. Pretty much just buffing, healing, and using magic on him. Then we fight the guy who's stealing mannequin skins, which is not really that tough. Once he's in there, he's not tough himself. I'm way stronger. So I punch him in the face until he dies and we get the stone. Now that we have the stone, I bring it back to my teacher. I'm not really sure why though. Why are we helping her? Anyway, she takes it and she's like, now my god will give me a reason, right? No, you're supposed to have come up with the reason yourself, dumbass. So the god goes into her body and controls her for a moment and asks me some questions. Now for me, I will answer as if I am a coward. Not that I really am in real life, I promise. And then she and the god fucks off. So we have to go figure out what else is going on. I mean, especially with Chiaki. I mean, she got her ass kicked by this guy. So we head all the way back to the Mantra headquarters, where we find her on Gozu Tenno's corpse, the guy who crumbled earlier from Hikawa's nightmare system, sucking all the Magetsui out of him. She's on his dead body, just sitting there with an arm missing. She got her ass beat up by that guy. I guess he did take her arm at least. And she's upset. Obviously, she's like, oh, my world creation reason is not going to happen. That sucks. But Gozu Tenno is still alive, and he offers his spirit to her, where she gets it, and she turns into half tree, half woman with jean clothes on. She's just got a bunch of jean clothing on. But she's now crazy, has a tree arm, and she's now fully realized her reason, and she's gonna try and enact it. She fucks right off, and we go back to see Hijiri, who is now losing his mind. He says that he knows a lot of things because of the Amala network. Now that he knows how to work it, he also believes he has a reason, and he can enact that reason. Only him, no one else. But before he's able to tell us anything about his reason, he is sucked into the Amala network by Isamu, who I guess he thought was dead, but not really. I mean, Isamu has just been running around. So he gets sucked
sucked in and we go after him. Inside the network, we talk to Isamu and he says, if you want to come help Hijiri or see what's going on, you got to come here and do these puzzles. And I'm like, God damn it. Okay, fine. But first, we have to fight the Phantom again. He's been coming back every so often just to mess with us with a new mechanic. This one's the easiest one by far. He just continuously gathers more phantoms into the battle. So as long as you get enough turns and kill a couple each turn, you will win the battle eventually. He is void to a couple things, which was a little annoying, but I beat him on the first go. The next set of areas all lead to Isamu and where he's holding Hijiri hostage. The only way to get to him is to go through these 3 different pyramids with different mechanics. And by different mechanics, I mean practically all of them are teleporting puzzles. And these are the worst puzzles. Honestly, I hated this area because of 2 things. One, at this point in the game, I am done doing random battles. They happen far too often, so most of the time I run as Toma to stop them from happening so often. But also I just retreat from every one of them that I can, because at this point in the game, it is much better to just find a place to grind, be prepared to grind, get the levels, and then go through the story. This is something that happens in RPGs with random battles, at least for me. There's just not enough time to do all these random battles in between story beats and bosses. Sometimes it just isn't fun. But being able to choose when you grind is helpful, which is why I like some games that have enemies show up on the world map and you walk around and you can avoid them or walk into them to fight them. The bosses, however, are a bit interesting. The very first pyramid I do is the White Pyramid, and this one has a boss battle against a big, tall, elemental looking guy and 4 elemental small minions in front of him. You must kill everyone at the same time, and that doesn't mean all 5 of them. You can kill 3 of the small ones, and then the last 2, the big one and the last small one, need to die together. Otherwise, they just keep reviving each other. This battle isn't necessarily difficult. Once you learn what you need to do and what elements that each one is weak to, you can take advantage of it very quickly. Even the first time I played this, I was able to do it, so it's not too hard. The next boss fight was this lovely demon head in the ground who comes up and bites you, and it's kind of scary the first time you see it. They did a good job with that. It was a surprise to me. So anyway, this fight is a little difficult only because this guy suddenly drains mana from all your characters to cast a big spell that will reduce everyone's health to 1. And then he still has a turn after that to attack. So if he does that and then he attacks your main character and he hits you, your battle is over. So you just have to hope that he hits someone else. There are ways to get around this. There's a way to use a spell called Tetrakarn, which blocks physical attacks once. And that's really helpful for when he does that. It will completely block the attack. Or you can use an item called the Magic Mirror, which stops magic attacks, which is the thing that reduces your health to 1. That will just void all the damage. He'll lose his turn and you can continue on. It's not hard to tell when he's going to do it. He uses a move called Beast Eye, which we've seen before. It gives the bosses extra turns, like a bunch of extra turns. He then drains all of our mana in preparation to actually cast the spell. I never figured out whether or not you could drain his mana away and make it so he couldn't cast the spell though, because I killed him before he actually got the chance to cast the spell. I had drained all the mana he had taken and I killed him too quickly. I don't even know how that happened. And that's one of the things about this game. I'll talk about this at the end, but I killed him just kind of randomly. The last boss of the last pyramid really isn't too difficult. For me, it was only because she is physical resistant and I use a lot of physical attacks because Bright Might is super helpful. So several of my party members have it and that's how I win a lot of my battles. Anyway, she casts Dragon Eye to give her extra turns, just like Beast Eye. She can cast both Dacunda and Dakaja to remove debuffs from herself and remove our buffs from us. She casts party-wide damaging spells, which luckily I am void to a few of them. And then she can also cast a spell that will silence party members, and that's kind of important because that's the only way to hit her is with magic. So luckily my main character who has no magic spends that time curing people of silence so that they can deal damage. I beat her on the first try. We make it to the place that Isamu is holding Hijiri, and he sucks all the Kagetsuchi out of him to summon his god for his reasons. So Hijiri is gone. I guess he's fine with it. I don't know why, and Isamu is now part of a god and is able to summon his own reason for new world creation. And he curls up in this little red ball and then disappears. Bye, later, dude. We head back to see Fudamimi and we find out that Chiaki is actually there to kill him and take all the Kagetsuchi that Fudamimi has saved up in hopes that the mannequins can actually summon a reason for new world creation, which sadly, you know what the reason is for Fudamimi to have a new world created? So that everyone can live in peace, which actually sounds pretty nice comparatively to all these other ones that have all these stipulations and crazy bits. He just wants them to live happily and be their own people. But nope, Chiaki's gonna steal it all. So you actually go to help him, kind of, and she summons 3 archangels to come fight you. Now, luckily for me, I was just exactly built for this battle, and I win very quickly. A lot of my physical attacks land huge damage numbers, at least for me, and some criticals give me some extra turns. I have a lot of void and drain for the things that they cast on me. So if they cast something that drains, if they heal me from one of their spells, they practically lose all of their turns. So anytime they cast a fire spell, my team drains some of it and they immediately lose their turns, which means I have extra turns to beat these guys. And so I just start taking them out one by one. I choose the one on the far left, the far right, and then the middle, and they're gone. At the end of the fight, Chiaki takes all that Kagetsuchi and summons her own god and fucks right off yet again. Now everyone has kind of gotten enough Kagetsuchi to have a god, and they've all headed to kind of the same place. There's this building called the Diet Building. Anyway, I go here and I have to fight lots of really tough enemies, more teleporting stuff, which I hate, and you have to fight some statues that turn into strong kind of bosses. And the first boss is really easy. His name is Cert. He does a lot of fire attacks. He even retaliates with a fire physical attack. Most of my guys drain or void fire, including my main character who I equip a Magatama on to null fire. He does almost no damage to me and I kick his ass in like 5 minutes. After stumbling around this goddamn diet building, I find the next boss, which is another fire-looking guy, although he doesn't have resistances or nulls or void to fire. In fact, I use fire to kill him. But he's tough because he is also void to physical damage, which again, I do a lot of. So I have to skip that. Instead, I bring as many people in who do magic damage and who also debuff and buff myself. So I try my best. This guy summons some enemies in to help him, which I have to focus on with my main character since he has no magic. I have to constantly heal my guy's MP and just hope to God that his Hades Blast misses at least one character so that he loses turns, because Hades Blast is an all-out physical attack to everyone in the party. It does a lot of damage. So I do switch in someone who is anti-physical so that he loses turns when he does it, especially because he does it so freaking often. The next boss is very interesting. His name is Mott, and he does a couple interesting things. First, he can instantly kill your party. Second, he can use the spell Megadola, which does almighty damage and you cannot just block. Yes, you can reduce his overall damage, but it still hits party wide and there is no resistances to it. Third, he likes to use Beast Eye, which of course gives him extra turns. But apparently his AI is a little broken and will always have a chance of using Beast Eye, even if he has already used it that turn. So here's what could happen. He could buff himself, Beast Eye to give himself back 4 turns, buff himself again, give himself Beast Eye before he ends his turn, get 4 more turns, use Megadola 3 times and kill your entire party. You have no choice. He could do that the very first turn, kill you outright, immediately. So I fight him maybe 5 or 6 times before I think, man, there's just no way. I need to have a better party with better attacks that actually hit his weakness, which is lightning or Zeo. So I do that. I spend like 4 hours grinding, and then 1 whole hour of that 4 hours, 1 whole hour, a little bit more than that, probably an hour and 10 minutes, I fuse together one demon. I want very specific skills on this demon. I practically need all of the inherited skills to be very, very specific. This means over an hour of just hitting fuse over and over and over and seeing if it works over and over and over. I do this for over an hour. I'm so glad the people in the stream stayed to talk to me and watch, because god damn, that was ridiculous. Once I do all of this, I go back to fight him with my newly set up party and die 3 more times. Just fucking get destroyed. And I'm thinking, man, I don't know what else to do. I mean, I guess grind a bunch more. But I thought, no, this game is different. You sometimes get really good luck and really terrible luck. Let me fight him one more time. I fight him one more time and I beat him in less than 5 minutes. Just no close calls, nothing. Destroy him. This game is about fighting the boss and learning their patterns that they can do, but also getting lucky with what they choose to do, because sometimes they just don't choose the right things and you can outright win doing nothing but being consistently crazy and going back and fighting them over and over. Eventually they will relent and do the wrong things. Shortly after this, we finally reach Hikawa in a 360 roll cage type room with your teacher there. And of course, she said she wasn't going to be used by him again. However, here she is being used by him again. She just doesn't have the power to fight him, and he has a lot of it. He wants the Kagetsuchi, which is the thing that gives power, and she didn't want that. She wanted this like little device, and it didn't really work out that well for her. So I answer in a specific way so that we get Hikawa to merge with his god, and he looks kind of like creepy, and he he goes away, but he takes I think he takes your teacher's power, and she hands you back the device you gave her earlier, telling you the only way to stop Hikawa is to go back to the pyramids where Isamu had you do all those things and insert this into the top pyramid, where then the obelisk will grow extremely tall, and that's how it's going to reach the Kagetsui, all the way at the very top of this inverted tall obelisk. Well, she's gone now, and we are visited yet again by the small boy and the old lady, and they're saying more cryptic stuff to us, but what they're essentially saying is this is the end of the game. You kind of got to make your choice now before you enter the Tower of Kagetsuchi, which is something you, if you were going to play this game, should keep in mind. Remember to look up those endings, because as nice as it is to just kind of walk in on it, you will not figure it out by yourself unless you play a lot. So if you only want 1 or 2 playthroughs, look up the endings so you know when to do what you need to do. I, however, head directly into the Tower of Kagetsuchi so that I can confront everyone and their shit reasons for making a new world. I don't want no reasons. That's what we're here for. So I begin to scale this tower, which is very, very long. I spend a lot of time retreating from fights so that I can just move along. I do end up finding myself grinding eventually. So instead of just talking about the floors, which have almost nothing to do with anything, I run through those things super fast. Here's exactly what I do for each of the bosses. The first boss that I fight is Hikawa and his god. This one isn't too bad. The first time I fight him, I die. I didn't know exactly what his mechanics are or what he does, but he begins the battle kind of passive, letting you beat the crap out of him. Eventually, when you've done enough damage or enough time has passed, he will revert to his attack mode, where he does a lot of different things. The 2 biggest ones are Megadolon, which hits your whole party for almighty damage, and he does Apocalypse, which I don't know what kind of damage that is. It's almighty, but I was never able to reduce the damage numbers it did for anything I did. So the biggest thing for me was using Sukukaja, which was increasing my dodge chance. That way, if he uses it, it already seems to have a lower accuracy rate for some reason, which is nice. And if he misses even one person with an Apocalypse, the first turn he uses it, it will end his turn right there. So yeah, it doesn't do a lot of damage, but luckily you can dodge it, as well as Megadolon. It does not have a 100% accuracy rate, so you might dodge it much easier than most other spells. And then I just lean on Bright Might. I mean, all my characters except the main character have Bright Might, and I'm able to take an entire 2 full turns to his 1 turn for each character. I mean, it's wonderful. It's what really saves me in this end game where my demons, if anyone who knows this game, you can see they are not the greatest in the world. They are just doing the job. A bit later, I find myself suddenly thrust into the battle with Isamu and his god, and this one's creepy as shit. He has this little whale rhino looking thing with his face on the front of it, and it's huge, and it's the same texture as its skin, so it's really bizarre looking. Anyway, this fight wasn't very hard. It's just surprising. This one actually has a decent mechanic, and I was not at all ready for it. However, in the middle of battle, I was able to deal with it. So here's what happens. This guy is able to change his elemental weaknesses. He also changes the spells that he casts. He will always cast one type of spell and is weak to the opposite. So if he is weak to Zeo, he will be strong with Force or Mazanma or, Zan. If he is casting Mabufu, which is ice, then he is weak to fire or Agi. So you just need to cast the correct thing. And at first, it's really obvious what he's doing. The very beginning, he makes it clear that he's changing his elements and that you need to use the next one. However, the third phase, he does not tell you what he's doing. He just says that he's changing his elemental resistances and weaknesses. You just have to guess. You have to remember the order that they are in, because he changes every single turn. His first turn, he will change the elemental resistances and weaknesses and then use the spell. Or he might not use the spell. He might just attack or use some other kind of attack, and you don't know. So if you keep track of what he has casted before, you will know what to do. Now for me, this fight was a puzzle, and it took almost 40 minutes, even though I was almost never in danger of dying. It's because I wasn't prepared, and I had just enough magic of the right types to eke out a victory, because it took a long time. It was just wait for the right one, the right weaknesses to come up and then cast those spells. So I liked this fight because it did make you think, and if you wanted to beat it without knowing what he did, on your first go, you come up and it's all a surprise. You can figure it out. It's just, can you in time? And then if you do, well, can you do it with what you have? Before I fight the last boss, I must fight Thor again. If you remember from the beginning of the game in the Mantra headquarters, Thor is the one we needed to defeat to get out of jail, which we did. Thor is much stronger this time and does a lot of critical attacks with just normal attacks, which gives him more turns to critically strike you yet again. He kills me quite a few times just because of how easy it is for him to get a critical attack. Although I do end up equipping anti-physical on both my main character and another one of my demons, meaning that anytime he did some kind of physical attack against them, it would lose him turns and he wouldn't be able to do any damage. Once I did that, it was pretty simple. The other people were resistant to Zeo, which is lightning, and that's what he also does, Thor, so he uses lightning and attacks. Here we go. The last fight is with Chiaki. She is the strongest by far, and it's the hardest boss I've fought this entire game. By herself, Chiaki is really not that difficult. However, a little bit through the fight, she summons two other enemies, both very, very strong. The one on the right, the Cheetah Man, heals pretty much whenever you deal about 1,000 to 2,000 damage to Chiaki. He will heal all of it. And no, unless you are super endgame party, I don't think there's any way you can get past this heal. I mean, I don't even think that she has 13,000 health, but he heals her for 13,000 health. So no matter what you do, you just gotta kill him first. And that was my conundrum. Does killing him actually work? Does killing both of these enemies actually work, or will she re-summon them? That's always a hard thing to do. I think that's why this boss is good. You have to figure out each of the mechanics of the fight. So this guy heals, and he also removes buffs and uses Beast Eye, which is the worst skill to have on something like this. Man, he is able to get him and his party so many extra turns. Here's the thing though, Chiaki herself will do two things. She'll do this holy spell and a Mahamanamra spell, which is the expel class of spells. This one does instantly kill someone if it is able to connect with one of your characters. So you go for resistances to expel, because once you do that, the fight becomes a lot simpler. She uses them so often that after the first character casts Beast Eye or heals her, if she uses the holy spell or the expel spell and one of your guys voids it or misses, it will just take all of their turns away. The difference between just resisting something and missing is a lot different than draining and voiding spells. Drains and voids are supposed to be like this real big mess up. If they hit a character that can drain or void one of their spells, they pretty much lose every turn they have. That goes for you as well. But because we know what to avoid here, we don't fall into that pitfall. She does though. Her AI has her cast those spells all the time. So the second you have a party set up that voids those things, they almost always lose their turns. Yes, she can use other spells and regular attacks, so they end up keeping all 5 of those turns that guy uses Beast Eye for. But if she casts those, which she does frequently, you can get entire turns back and they don't have a chance. So you kill the guy on the right, the Cheetah Man, first. The guy on the left also casts his own spells. Once the guy on the right's defeated, this one will also heal her if you deal damage without killing him first. He is necessary to kill, otherwise you can't kill her. At least it was for me. He casts some other damaging spells, as well as some status ailments that really screw the party if you let them hit them. So you kill both of these guys as fast as you possibly can and hope that she continues to cast those spells. One thing you can also do, which I had about 6 of in my inventory, is use a magic mirror. Regardless of whether or not you are weak to something, it will completely block one spell. And almost always she will use those spells, so it's pretty safe to use a magic mirror. If she doesn't and she uses a regular attack, one of the other two might use a magic spell that you could completely block. The magic mirror only blocks one spell for each character. It will last until they cast a spell on you, but it only does it once. So your hope is that she uses it so it blocks it and they lose all their turns. And that's it. You need to make sure you kill those two guys first and then just wail on her, which at this point all of my characters have bright might. So I have 2 full turns with my entire party to just smack the crap out of her. And then my main character, using a very strong attack, sometimes crits and gets close to 1,000 damage, which is a lot of damage. And that's it. Chiaki is down as long as I pay attention. And it did take me about 4 or 5 times to figure it out. And I was worried that I just wasn't going to be able to handle it. But luck was on my side, and she used her spells so often and I avoided them so often that I got all the turns in the world. And that is it. This is the end of my game. I picked the quickest ending because it is still an ending. It may be unsatisfying, but this challenge is about finishing games, and with multiple endings, I'm going to choose the quickest one to get to, as long as it makes sense. If it's half an hour into the game, obviously I'm not doing that one. But this was about 43 hours in. This absolutely counts. So I got the demon ending, which is very unsatisfying. Honestly, it's kind of just a, well, I guess it's over type ending. And this is what happens. Because I rejected everyone's reason. I mean, I went and killed all these people. I said, nah, to everyone, I don't care about your reasons. I mean, I made fun of them the whole time. The Kagetsuchi up in the sky looks into your heart and says, oh, I see, you're just a demon. You didn't even care about any of the reasons. You just killed everyone and came here and you don't know what's going on. So it's really disappointed in you. It's so disappointed, it is just done. It's like, I'm gonna just go away until the next time this happens and I can help someone choose a reason. Otherwise, you just stay here by yourself in the desert until you die. And that's it. That is the game. You then live in the desert with the other demons until the end of time or whenever. I don't know what else happens. I mean, that's it. That's all we know. We never know if it ever happens to this world again, which I'm sure it does. But, it's just kind of a funny ending. Like, there's no reason. You didn't choose anything. You just fucking fumbled all the reasons around until they said, you know what? Never mind. You don't know what you're doing. And that is it. Game number 64 complete. This game was absolutely fantastic. And I want people to understand that I really, really liked it. But I didn't think this game was overly difficult in any fashion. It was definitely very reminiscent of my playthroughs of Final Fantasy X, Persona 3, and Dragon Quest VIII. And those all actually lasted longer than this game, excluding Final Fantasy X. It was a little bit shorter. I know that game a little better. When I'm measuring difficulty in a video game, I look at the mechanics. Are the mechanics something that I can understand, learn, and then master? And how do they put those mechanics together in layers to make me understand, learn, and master all of them in different ways? This game does have that. Honestly, the bosses are some of the best RPG bosses out there. Some of them are difficult, some of them are a little unfair at times, but generally I found myself enjoying the puzzles of figuring out what I needed in my party to fight a specific boss. Things I would not consider difficult because of the way they work are random battles and the enemies in random battles using one-hit kill spells. Random battles are just that. Random. You don't have a choice, so there's nothing really to learn or master about them. In fact, halfway through the game, like I do with most RPGs, I spend my time retreating from battles because there's no reason for me to fight so many battles. I only want to fight when I'm ready to fight. And this game does give you a choice. It's just a weird way of giving it to you. Here's some random battles, or you can just skip them by both running or using a spell to get you out of the battles. Now you can use a spell called Estoma to reduce the amount of random battles you have, though you still have them. Retreating or using Trafiri to escape a battle at 100% accuracy is helpful. In fact, you can even have a demon that can infinitely use Trafiri throughout your entire travels. Just have them in your party, have them have Life Drain and Trafiri. Start the battle, have them use Life Drain to get the mana back, pass all your turns until you get back to them, and then use Trafiri to escape the battle. Your first turn will get you out of the battle, and you will always have enough mana to continue to do it. Retreating works just fine though. Very rarely did I find myself retreating and then dying, because maybe the retreat didn't work. So I don't think that is a part of the difficulty of this game. You can absolutely get around it with no issues. As for the one-hit kill spells when enemies appear in random battles, I mean, yeah, you don't always have the foresight to know when an enemy is going to use that spell, and they can ambush you and use it on their very first turn, killing you within seconds of a random battle starting. That is just how it is. Don't grind in areas with enemies who do that, or if you know they're in an area you're grinding in, just equip the Magatama that will help you out with a resistance to that spell. It happened to me maybe 5 or 6 times throughout the whole game, but it was never enough to make me want to quit. I mean, I had just saved, or it wasn't that long into my save that I died, so it was never that big of a deal. So I don't think that makes things difficult. It was, again, more of an annoyance, and I got around it by just going, and then restarting my save and continuing on. It was never so bad. So just always save, really. That's the best thing you can do in an RPG anyway. And that kind of gets around this problem. I think many people would agree that some of the difficulty comes from making sure you have the right team for the right situation. When the game begins, you have many less options that you do at the end of the game. But even then, at the end of the game, people feel like they have to go back and spend a lot of time finding the correct demons at the correct levels to use the correct spells. And I don't think that's necessarily 100% true. Because when I beat the game,
or at least my version of the game, I had very underleveled characters. I didn't have the coolest demons out there, which should have been easy to get, but I just skipped a lot of the game. So I was able to fight these end bosses with lower level demons. I don't think having lower level demons with the correct spells is actually that bad. It was way more helpful than you would imagine. Giving your characters extra turns while still dealing damage and having some kind of helpful buffs or debuffs is fine. It works just fine. Just bring in that lower level demon for those things. Come in with a weakness, come in with some healing, come in with some buffs and debuffs. They are still super helpful and will absolutely fill out a team, even though they're lower level or not as good as the demons you have access to in other places. So never think that you are stuck because you need a higher level demon. Just bring one in that's lower level that has the correct stuff and you'll be just fine. Don't forget, weaknesses and critical strikes will deal a lot more damage in general. Yes, you won't be doing maximum amount, but that means throughout the game, as long as you are continuously getting demons in your party, making sure you have a few gems to buy the matamas to upgrade some of those demons, and then just fusing, which is kind of natural. You have to fuse to continue to go through the game sometimes. Then you'll be fine. You'll be able to go back and get a demon that you had before that worked really well. And yeah, he's lower level like I said, but still fills out that role. I also want to cover this base before anyone says anything. Yes, I did not fight the hardest bosses in the game, but that is exactly what they are, the hardest bosses. If you can make it to them, then yeah, they should be difficult. I made it through most of the game with very, very few problems. I did die quite a few times, sure, but when I died, it was from learning what the boss did and then coming back to fight them again and win. So if you make it all the way to these hard bosses and the end games, dungeons and stuff like that, then yeah, they're gonna be difficult. And yeah, you might need to get things around to fight them properly, but that's the point of these harder bosses. Many people during my stream said it was a miracle I got to where I did at the level I did and with the demons I did. In my opinion then, this means that strategy and understanding of the game mechanics is much more helpful than you'd first imagine, even more helpful than having the correct level and the correct demons. I was made fun of several times in many of the RPGs I played on the channel so far for my very odd choices. And yes, I make really odd choices about things because it's kind of fun. I get to choose these things and see if they work. And you know what? I've beaten all the RPGs I've come up against. That means that I'm doing something correct, which means I just apply myself. I just think about what I need to do in the battle, and that's the whole thing. Maybe I'm really good at RPGs for some reason. I really doubt it. But in the end, anyone can come in, take the time, learn, and don't forget, use the internet to fill in some blanks you might not understand without 500 hours in the game. So do I recommend this game to anyone out there who might like RPGs or who likes this kind of aesthetic and atmosphere and kind of gameplay? Then yes, absolutely. This is a super fun game with a large series surrounding it and lots of different games to play because of it. And I'm going to play all of them on the PS2. There's some interesting ones that don't follow traditional RPG battle mechanics. There's even one that's a third-person action type game, which is really weird. But yes, this game is so much fun. And there's an HD remaster you can get today and play today with some quality of life, maybe, I think, and at least nicer looking graphics, you know, they're HD. And you absolutely can play through and beat the game. You might start out with some difficulties, but as long as you're willing to learn and master some of these mechanics, like the turn system inside of battles, you absolutely can do it. Anyway, I want to say thank you to anyone who stayed this long into this long ass video. What a great game. What a weird game. What a cool idea for a story as well. I think it's worth going through this game a couple times. So thank you everyone who was here during the streams. Everyone gave me some hints about what I should do for certain things, told me some of the rules, which is really helpful, kept me company as I sat there for an hour and a half doing the same 3-button combination to fuse my demons and get the right skills. Thank you so much. Also, thank you to anyone who's in this video has stayed this long. I can't believe you stayed this long. Thank you so much. Also, thank you to the YouTube and Patreon members. I really appreciate it. Really I do. It's making these things all possible. So thank you so much. And just everyone, just thank you everyone. This is really cool. I am having so much fun doing this challenge, and we're into some fun games now. On the weekends, I'll be playing Monster Hunter Dose with my sister, and that'll go on until it's complete, although it will be a long time. And then we've got a good list of games coming up. I'm in the middle of Mega Man Anniversary Collection. I'm on Mega Man 2. I'll be playing Dark Watch after
Chapter, then The Warriors. I'll be playing Little Britain, which is going to be very interesting. I'll then play Shadow Hearts, Ratchet and Clank, and from there, not sure quite yet, but that's quite a few games. It's probably going to be about a month and a half. Thank you so much, and I'll be back for another video soon. Later!